The wealthy Mafia boss chuckled with arrogance. "I'll give you a Ferrari if you can serve me in Chinese." His voice was thick with mockery, a taunt clearly aimed to belittle her. However, the waitress's confident reply stunned him into silence. Before we jump into today's story, make sure to show your support, like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this. Now, let's begin. Table 7, the one in the far corner, needed attention. The Mafia boss, a towering figure of wealth and power, motioned with a subtle nod toward his manager. Samantha Adams, the waitress, adjusted her red apron as she approached the table with grace. Lumiere, Manhattan's top-tier restaurant, catered to movie stars, politicians, and billionaires, people who treated the staff with barely concealed disdain. But Samantha didn't mind. Working at Lumiere paid the bills, and after the incident at the UN 2 years ago, anonymity was all she craved. The man sitting at table 7 oozed wealth. He sat tall, dressed impeccably in a midnight blue suit, which surely cost more than her annual salary. His posture was regal, as though he were perched upon a throne. The man's perfectly groomed beard contrasted with his full lips, which were twisted into a constant smirk, as if mocking the world around him. 2 other men, similarly dressed, flanked him, but it was clear they were mere subordinates. Samantha maintained her professional smile, despite the way his eyes scanned her like she was an object on display. "Good evening, sir," she greeted, her voice smooth as silk. "Welcome to Lumiere. May I get you started with something to drink?" He didn't respond right away. Instead, he leaned over to speak to his companions in rapid-fire Arabic, causing them all to burst into laughter. Samantha, though seemingly unaffected, stood tall, her face betraying none of the emotions swirling inside her. She had seen worse. She had been through worse. "I'll have your finest bottle of 1982 Lafite Rothschild," the man said after a long pause, his accent carrying just a hint of refinement. "And perhaps you could recommend something special?" Samantha nodded, maintaining eye contact with him. "Our chef's tasting menu is exceptional tonight, featuring a Wagyu beef course not available on the regular menu." The man, whose name she still didn't know, leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. "I'm not interested in what everyone else gets," he said, his tone self-assured. "I'm Karim Al-Fahad. Perhaps you've heard of me?" he asked, a smile curling at the edges of his lips. Samantha shook her head, but nodded politely. She didn't know him, but she wasn't about to admit it. "I own the Falcon Hotel Group," he added, waiting for recognition. When she didn't react, his expression shifted to one of irritation. "I just acquired the building across the street. Soon, this entire block will belong to me." "Congratulations, Mr. Al-Fahad," Samantha said, her voice smooth but professional. "I'll fetch that wine for you." As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her in her tracks. "Wait," he said, his tone now carrying an edge. "I have a proposition for you." His companions exchanged amused glances, clearly enjoying the unfolding drama. Samantha's stomach tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. "Sir." Karim reached into his tailored jacket, slowly pulling out a sleek leather wallet. He retrieved a check and placed it deliberately on the table. $1 million, he said, his voice raised slightly so that nearby diners could hear. "If you can take my dinner order," in Arabic. A stunned silence blanketed the room. Even the pianist in the corner stopped playing. Samantha didn't flinch. "That's inappropriate, sir," she replied, her voice calm. "Is it?" Karim's grin widened. "I'm just appreciating your culture. Most Americans only speak one language." She stood there, her professional demeanor unwavering. "Yes. Prove me wrong." $1 million, he challenged, tapping the check with his manicured finger. "Just a few sentences in Arabic. Or is that too difficult for a waitress?" The way he emphasized waitress made it sound like the lowest of professions. Heat crept up Samantha's neck, not from embarrassment, but from a slow, building anger. He leaned back in his chair, satisfaction evident on his face. As I thought. Without a word, Samantha responded. Her Arabic was flawless, each word flowing perfectly. Takdim talabai tom saidi matha tegaban takula hadalmasa. I would like to take your order, sir. What would you like to eat this evening? Kareem froze. The smugness drained from his face. His companion sat in stunned silence, unsure of what had just happened. She didn't stop there. May I suggest our signature dish? Wagyu beef, slow-cooked for 8 hours and seasoned with herbs imported from Morocco. The restaurant was completely still. Every eye in the room was focused on their table. Kareem stared at her, completely dumbfounded. You speak perfect Arabic? Kareem asked, his voice betraying his disbelief. Samantha smiled and switched back to English. Harvard University. Department of Linguistics. I specialized in Semitic languages. Kareem's eyes widened. And Farsi? He asked, unable to hide his curiosity. Yes, she replied. And Urdu, French, Russian, and Mandarin, if you'd like to hear more. She gestured toward the check. Will you be paying for that now, or after your meal? Nearby diners exchanged whispers, some even applauding. Kareem, still reeling, stared at her. He couldn't believe what he had just experienced. This waitress, who seemed to live a simple life, was more educated and worldly than he could have ever imagined. You're a linguist, he mused. Yet you work as a waitress? Samantha's smile was subtle, yet there was a hint of mystery in her eyes. Career changes happen. The rest of the meal passed in a blur for Kareem. He couldn't stop thinking about her, trying to piece together the enigma that was Samantha. He finally offered her the check again. I'll honor my bet, he said, his tone surprisingly respectful. $1 million. No strings attached. Samantha's gaze never wavered. Keep your money, Mr. Al-Fahad. I don't need your charity. She turned and walked away, her posture regal, her head held high. Kareem watched in disbelief as she disappeared into the kitchen. In that moment, something inside him shifted. This woman, the waitress he had belittled just minutes ago, had turned his world upside down. He was no longer in control. And for the first time in years, he was genuinely curious about someone. Despite the tightness around her eyes, Samantha managed to maintain a composed appearance. But when Kareem spoke, the tension in the air was undeniable. Is everything all right? He asked, his voice steady but laced with concern. She hesitated but then replied smoothly, yes. Will there be anything else, gentlemen? She inquired with practiced professionalism, her gaze flicking between Kareem and his companions. Kareem paused, then decided against pressing further on the matter. Just the check, he said, adding with a small but knowing smile, the real one, please. As Samantha processed his payment, Kareem made a sudden decision. He scribbled a different amount on the tip line, $10,000, and signed the check with a flourish. That's too much, Samantha remarked as she saw the extravagant tip. Consider it an investment, he responded with a cool, almost playful expression. In what? She asked, eyebrows raising slightly. A future conversation, he said cryptically, handing her his business card. Call me if you ever decide you want more than just this, Kareem added, his eyes gleaming with the faintest hint of something deeper. Her eyes flashed with a mix of defiance and clarity. Not all of us measure success by the size of our bank accounts, Mr. Al-Fahad. No, he responded, intrigued. What's your measure then? Integrity, she stated firmly as she handed his card back. Something money can't buy. As she walked away, Kareem felt something unfamiliar stir within him. Respect mingled with fascination. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but something about her had shifted his perception. He had never encountered someone who spoke to him like that, with such poise and unapologetic strength. Sir, Ahmad, his security chief, said, returning to the table. You should know something about that man. Karim glanced up. Who was he? Victor Caldwell, Ahmad replied. Former State Department official. He leaned closer, his voice low. And from what I could find, Samantha Adams once worked directly for him. You need to leave now, Lisa, Samantha's roommate, said urgently, standing in the doorway of their modest apartment. Her arms were crossed, and suitcases were packed beside her. Samantha had just finished a grueling double shift, her mind still reeling from her strange encounter with Karim al-Fahad. But the sight of Lisa's anxious expression only deepened her unease. What's going on? Samantha asked, confusion flooding her exhausted body. Two men were asking about you in the building, Lisa said, her voice trembling slightly. They showed your picture. Dark suits, earpieces. They didn't look like police. Cold dread flooded through Samantha's veins. Did they see you? No, Lisa responded quickly. Mrs. Petrova from 3B warned me. She saw them lurking around. They're looking for you. Samantha's stomach dropped. She'd hoped her past was behind her, but the moment she'd been dreading had arrived. Zam, Lisa added, using Samantha's old nickname. You promised when you moved in that whatever you were running from wouldn't follow you here. I know. I'm sorry, Samantha muttered, quickly moving to grab the emergency bag she kept hidden in her closet. Is this about your old job? The one you never talk about? Lisa asked, her voice tinged with concern. Samantha hesitated, considering how much to reveal. Lisa deserved the truth, but it wasn't safe to say everything. I used to work as a translator, she said slowly. I overheard something I shouldn't have. People died because of it. Lisa's expression softened, her eyes filled with worry. Where will you go? She asked quietly. Better if you don't know, Samantha replied, zipping up the bag. I'll send money for rent until you find a new roommate. Forget the rent. Just be safe, Lisa insisted, her voice breaking. With that, Samantha was gone, slipping out of the apartment in the dead of night. She hailed a cab, trying to shake off the feeling that her past was catching up to her faster than she could outrun it. She ditched her phone, sending a coded message to Marcus, her one remaining contact from her old life, weather turning bad. Seeking new climate. The taxi dropped her at a busy intersection in the heart of Manhattan. She walked 3 blocks before hailing another taxi, ensuring she wasn't being followed. When she finally arrived at a small hotel in Brooklyn, she used an alternate ID to check in, paying cash for 3 nights. She couldn't allow herself to be traced. In the safety of her room, Samantha finally allowed herself to breathe. She sat on the edge of the bed, trying to make sense of everything. The appearance of Victor Caldwell and Karim al-Fahad on the same night couldn't be a coincidence. But what connected them? Her laptop hummed quietly as she began her search. Karim's public profile was easy to piece together, 32 years old, the son of a Saudi businessman and an American mother educated at Oxford. His story was straightforward. He inherited his father's struggling hotel business at the age of 22 after both parents died in a plane crash. Over the next decade, he transformed it into the Falcon Hotel Group, a global luxury chain. But what interested Samantha more was what she couldn't find. No scandals, no political affiliations, no links to anything that could explain his interest in her or her past. It was as if he were exactly what he claimed to be, just another successful, albeit arrogant, businessman. Her phone buzzed, breaking her focus. It was Marcus. Mutual friend asking questions. Not alone. Safe house. Compromise. Meet at the museum. Noon tomorrow. Samantha closed her eyes, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her. Sleep would have to wait. She opened her laptop again and started researching Karim al-Fahad. But just as she was getting deeper into the mystery, a knock at the door interrupted her. She froze, her hand instinctively moving to the gun in her bag. She hadn't told anyone where she was. Who could it be? Ms. Adams, a male voice called muffled through the door. I apologize for the late hour. Samantha recognized the voice immediately. It was Ahmad, Karim's security chief. How had they found her? I'm not here to harm you, Ahmad said, his tone calm. Mr. Al-Fahad would like to speak with you. It's important. Give me one reason why I should trust you, Samantha replied, her voice steady, her gun now in hand. Because Victor Caldwell was found dead an hour ago, Ahmad said quietly. And you're about to be framed for his murder. The world around Samantha tilted, her mind racing. Victor dead, she repeated, unable to comprehend what he was saying. Check the news if you don't believe me, Ahmad said. Samantha grabbed her phone and quickly found a breaking news alert: former State Department official found dead in Manhattan hotel. Her breath caught in her throat. This couldn't be happening. How did you find me? She asked, peering through the peephole in her door. We followed the men who were following you, Ahmad said, his voice low and serious. Mr. Al-Fahad is waiting in the car, he continued. He believes he knows why this is happening and he wants to help. Samantha's mind raced. Why would he help me? Because his parents' plane crash wasn't an accident, Ahmad replied. And he believes the same people who killed them are now coming for you. The pieces were finally falling into place. She could hardly breathe, her thoughts spinning faster than she could keep up. My father? She asked suddenly, realization dawning on her. David Adams. He worked with the Saudi royal family in the 1990s. Ahmad nodded. He saved Karim's father during an attempted coup. Tonight, Mr. Al-Fahad realized who you were. Her heart raced. The truth was unfolding before her eyes. Her father's mysterious death 5 years ago, the classified files she had uncovered at the State Department, and the conversation that had forced her to disappear, all of it was connected. I need answers, Samantha said, her voice firm and resolute. Mr. Al-Fahad has some answers, Ahmad replied calmly. And together, you might find the rest, Ahmad added, his tone steady, but there was a glint of urgency in his eyes. Samantha made her decision. She swiftly gathered her emergency bag, securing the gun inside her waistband, and opened the door. Outside, a sleek black Bentley was parked at the curb, its polished surface reflecting the city lights. Ahmad opened the rear door for her, and as she slid into the seat, she caught sight of Karim. His expression was no longer the arrogant businessman from the restaurant. He looked different now, more serious, more dangerous. Ms. Adams, he greeted her as she sat beside him, his voice grave. I believe we have a common enemy. Samantha turned to face him, her eyes narrowing. And who would that be? Karim's gaze met hers, his eyes dark with restrained fury. The same people who murdered our fathers, and who are now cleaning up the mess, starting with Victor Caldwell and ending with us. The car pulled away from the curb, its engine a low rumble that matched the tension in the air. Samantha was being swept into yet another unpredictable chapter of her life, but this time, her only ally was the last person she expected. We need to move quickly, Karim said as the car sped through the city streets. His penthouse, overlooking Central Park, was only a few minutes away. The glittering skyline of New York contrasted sharply with the tension filling the car. They'll realize you've disappeared soon enough. Samantha sat quietly, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, watching the city pass by through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I'm still waiting for you to tell me who they are, she said, her voice low, but unyielding. Karim poured 2 glasses of scotch, the amber liquid shimmering in the dim light. He offered one to her, but she hesitated before accepting it. You don't trust easily, Karim remarked with a small smile, before taking a deliberate sip from her glass. Understandable, given the circumstances. Samantha took the glass from him but didn't drink. She couldn't yet bring herself to relax. My father, Ibrahim Al-Fahad, Karim began, setting the glass down. He wasn't just a hotelier. He was an intelligence asset for the American government, specifically working with the CIA's Middle Eastern Division during the 1990s. Samantha's breath caught in her throat. My father was stationed in Riyadh during that time, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Kareem met her gaze, his eyes steady. Exactly. David Adams. Cultural attaché. At least, that was his cover. Samantha stayed silent for a long moment, her mind processing the revelation. He was actually CIA, wasn't he? She asked, her voice trembling with the weight of the truth. Yes, Kareem confirmed, his voice softening. But you didn't know that until after his death. Samantha's mind raced. Our fathers worked together to prevent a coup that could have destabilized the region, she said, piecing it together. Your father saved mine during an assassination attempt in 1998. Kareem pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos before showing her a faded image. Two young men stood together, smiling in the photograph. One of them was Ibrahim al-Fahad, the other, David Adams. Samantha's hand trembled slightly as she took the phone. I've never seen this, she whispered. They became more than just assets and handlers, Kareem continued, his voice tinged with nostalgia. They were friends. After the coup attempt failed, my father was relocated to London, where I was born. We returned to Saudi Arabia only after things had settled, but he kept his connection to American intelligence. And this relates to Victor Caldwell how? Samantha asked, handing the phone back to him. Caldwell was from the State Department, but he had deep CIA connections, Kareem explained, his jaw tightening. When my parents died in a plane crash 10 years ago, Caldwell was the one who handled the American side of the investigation. The official cause? A mechanical failure. Samantha's brow furrowed. And you believe it wasn't an accident? No, Kareem said sharply. The plane was sabotaged by the same faction that attempted the coup years earlier. Samantha leaned forward, her mind spinning. That's a serious accusation. I have proof, Kareem replied, pulling a leather portfolio from his desk and spreading papers across the table. Bank transfers, encrypted communications, flight maintenance records that mysteriously disappeared from the official reports. Samantha's eyes scanned the documents quickly, her translator's instinct immediately picking up inconsistencies in the Arabic files. These maintenance logs have been altered, she said, pointing at the pages. Yes, Kareem agreed. And I believe Victor Caldwell was involved in the cover-up. Samantha's heart pounded. When I worked at the UN, I overheard Caldwell talking about something called Operation Sandstorm with Saudi officials, she said, her voice shaking with the memory. I didn't understand the significance at the time, but when I mentioned it to him later, he became threatening. Kareem leaned forward, his eyes darkening. What exactly did you hear? Names, dates, and something about Phase 2 being initiated, Samantha said, her mind flashing back to the conversation. 2 weeks later, I received classified documents implicating Caldwell and others in selling intelligence to Saudi extremists. The same extremists who tried to overthrow the government my father helped protect. Kareem's voice was grim. And that's when you ran? Yes, Samantha whispered. I took the documents to my superior. 3 days later, he died in a robbery gone wrong. That's when I changed my identity and disappeared. Samantha paused, her hands trembling slightly. I thought I was being paranoid until your father died of a convenient heart attack, Kareem finished for her. That's their signature. My mother's brother died the same way 6 months after my parents. Clean. Untraceable. Tears welled in Samantha's eyes as she finally took a long swallow of scotch. So Victor's death wasn't your fault. It was a message. Kareem's eyes locked onto hers. They're cleaning house, eliminating anyone who might connect them to Operation Sandstorm. Including us. Samantha's heart sank. Why now? After all this time? Because the final phase is approaching, Kareem replied, pointing to a document on the table. They've been siphoning billions from Saudi sovereign wealth funds using shell companies and cryptocurrency to hide the money. Next week, those funds are scheduled to be transferred to accounts controlled by former Saudi intelligence officials. The same ones who orchestrated the coup attempt 25 years ago. Samantha's blood ran cold. And they're planning to use that money for what? To finance something big? Kareem's expression darkened. A coordinated strike across multiple countries. It will destabilize not just Saudi Arabia, but the entire Middle East. Samantha's voice trembled with disbelief. How can they pull this off without intelligence agencies knowing? Because they have allies inside those agencies, Kareem said grimly. Including Caldwell. Samantha's mind raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibility. We need to take this to the authorities. Kareem's laugh was bitter. And tell them what? That a Saudi hotelier and an American waitress have uncovered an international conspiracy? We'd be dismissed as paranoid or silenced before we could speak. Then what do you suggest? Samantha asked, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. We find concrete proof linking them to Caldwell's murder and Operation Sandstorm, Kareem said, his voice hardening. Evidence so irrefutable that even their allies in government can't ignore it. Samantha's heart skipped a beat. Where do we find this proof? Kareem's smile was dangerous, a gleam of determination in his eyes. The annual Falcon Charity Gala is tomorrow night at my flagship hotel. Mohammed bin Rashid will be there. The man I believe orchestrated my parents' deaths and this entire operation. You want to confront a terrorist at your own charity event? Samantha asked, disbelief rising in her voice. No, Kareem replied smoothly. I want to steal the evidence from his hotel suite while he's at my charity event. Samantha stared at him, stunned. You can't be serious. Deadly serious, he said, his eyes gleaming with purpose. His security will be downstairs watching him. His suite will be vulnerable. Samantha shook her head. That's insane. Even if we could access his room, what makes you think he'd bring incriminating evidence with him? Because I made sure he would, Kareem said, a dangerous smile curling on his lips. Samantha stared at him, realization dawning. This whole time, your business, your success, it was all a means to an end. Kareem's voice hardened. Justice for my parents. Samantha's respect for him grew, mixed with an unsettling sense of dread. Beneath the arrogant billionaire was someone driven by the same need for truth that had consumed her life. I still think this is crazy, she said finally. Do you have a better plan? She didn't. Besides, Kareem added, you speak 6 languages and managed to disappear completely for 2 years. I suspect breaking into a hotel room isn't beyond your capabilities. Despite everything, Samantha found herself smiling, the faintest flicker of hope in her chest. I never said I couldn't do it, Samantha replied, her voice steady, though her mind was racing. I just said it was crazy. Then you'll help? Kareem asked, his voice softer now, but the question was weighted with more than just words. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them, 2 people from completely different worlds, bound by a shared tragedy and an urgent, dangerous mission. Yes, she said finally, her decision made. But we do this my way. Kareem's lips twitched into a rare, approving smile. Agreed, he said, his gaze sharp with respect. But before they could move forward, the door opened, and Ahmad entered, his expression as grave as ever. Sir, he began, his voice low. There's been a development. Samantha's heart skipped. What is it? The police are at Ms. Adams' apartment, Ahmad reported, his voice barely containing the gravity of the situation. They've issued a warrant for her arrest in connection with Victor Caldwell's murder. Faster than I expected, Kareem murmured under his breath. Samantha felt the walls closing in on her. Her pulse quickened, and the anxiety of being caught after so many years of evading it surged within her. I need to leave the country, she said, her voice strained. No, Karim responded firmly, a sharp edge to his tone. That's exactly what they want, to flush you out, to make you run. The moment you hit an airport or a border crossing, they'll have you. Samantha's breath caught. So I'm trapped? No, Karim corrected, his voice steady. You're protected for now. This penthouse has a private elevator and security measures that would impress the Pentagon. No one gets in without my authorization. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, a rich, woody scent of sandalwood mixed with something uniquely his own. One night, he said softly, his words a quiet promise. Tomorrow we get the evidence, and then I'll have my jet ready to take us wherever we need to go. Samantha felt an unexpected flutter in her chest, and it had nothing to do with fear. Us, she echoed, an eyebrow raising slightly. Karim's expression softened, just for a moment. I started this hunt 10 years ago, and I intend to see it through to the end. The intensity in his eyes stirred something deep inside her, something she'd thought long buried beneath layers of trauma and survival instinct. One night, she said, stepping back slightly to break the tension. But I'm not wearing a ball gown to commit felony breaking and entering. Karim's smile returned, transforming his face into something entirely more approachable. Actually, that's exactly what you'll be wearing. Samantha looked at him, perplexed, until his next words made sense. The perfect disguise is often hidden in plain sight. For the first time in years, Samantha felt a spark of hope amidst the chaos. Tomorrow, everything would change, one way or another. The sapphire gown shimmered beneath the chandeliers of the Falcon Hotel's grand ballroom. Samantha adjusted the delicate mask that covered the upper half of her face, grateful for the anonymity it provided. The masquerade charity gala was the perfect setting for her to slip into the role of Isabelle Laurent, a French art dealer with ties to high society, as she and Karim continued their dangerous mission. Across the room, Karim caught her eye, raising his champagne glass in subtle acknowledgement. He looked every bit the part of the dashing, mysterious businessman, his black mask adding an air of intrigue that suited him perfectly. No one would guess that beneath their elegant exteriors, they were planning a high-stakes infiltration. Remember? Ahmed's voice came through the nearly invisible earpiece. Bin Rashid arrived 10 minutes ago, suite 4208. His security team has 4 men, 2 at the gala, 2 patrolling the executive floor. Samantha, pretending to sip her champagne, gave a barely perceptible nod. Copy that. The plan was simple yet dangerous. As the host of the gala, Karim would keep Bin Rashid occupied. Samantha, introduced as Karim's date, would use the cover of the event to excuse herself, then make her way to the executive floor with the security credentials Ahmad had prepared. Enjoying yourself, darling? Karim appeared at her side, placing a possessive hand at the small of her back. Immense, Samantha replied, slipping effortlessly into the French accent she had honed for this very moment. Your charity events are always so stimulating. Wait until the after-party, he whispered, his lips brushing her ear. To the onlookers, they appeared to be sharing a private moment. In reality, he was giving her an update. Bin Rashid brought his entire entourage. Security is tighter than we expected, he murmured. Nothing I can't handle, Samantha replied, her voice steady despite the heightened tension. The skills that had once made her an exceptional diplomatic translator, attention to detail, quick thinking, adaptability, had served her well during the past 2 years on the run. I have no doubt, Karim said, his tone more serious than before. She looked up at him sharply, catching a glimpse of something genuine in his eyes, a respect that surprised her. Before she could respond, a heavily accented voice interrupted them. A magnificent event, as always. Karim turned smoothly, his demeanor shifting to that of a gracious host. Mr. Bin Rashid, I'm honored you could attend. Mohammed bin Rashid was a striking figure, tall and lean with silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard. His eyes, however, were cold, assessing Samantha with a sharp, calculating look. And who is this enchanting creature? Bin Rashid asked, his voice smooth but filled with a subtle malice. Isabelle Laurent, Karim said quickly, squeezing Samantha's hand in warning. A dear friend from Paris. Samantha extended her hand with a practiced smile. Enchanted, she murmured. Bin Rashid brought her hand to his lips, the touch sending a shiver down her spine. The pleasure is mine, mademoiselle. His touch was cold, clinical, and something about it made her skin crawl. She forced herself to maintain her composure. This man had orchestrated the deaths of Karim's parents, and possibly her father as well, and countless others. Isabelle is curating my new art collection, Karim continued smoothly, never missing a beat. She has an exceptional eye for value. Indeed, Bin Rashid said, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer than necessary. Perhaps she might offer her opinion on some pieces I've recently acquired. Another time, perhaps, Karim interjected, smoothly redirecting the conversation. The auction is about to begin. Would you join me at the main table? You're seated at my right. Of course. As they moved away, Bin Rashid's eyes flicked back toward her. There was something in his expression, a flicker of recognition, that sent a chill down her spine. Ahmad, Samantha whispered into the earpiece, the security shift change is happening. You have 12 minutes. Copy that, Ahmad's voice crackled through. I'll keep them busy. Samantha waited for 30 seconds, establishing her presence by chatting briefly with a waiter. Then, without a second thought, she moved swiftly toward the exit, slipping into the service elevator and swiping the security card Ahmad had provided. The executive floor was eerily quiet, the plush carpeting muffling her every step. Using a small tablet Ahmad had given her, she tracked the guards' positions through the hotel's system. 2 red dots moved down the west corridor, heading away from Bin Rashid's suite. It was her chance. Suite 4208 was secured with both a key card reader and a digital keypad, but thanks to Ahmed's preparations, she had the override codes. Her pulse quickened as she entered the sequence, holding her breath until the lock disengaged with a soft click. The suite was opulent beyond words, a sprawling set of rooms with sweeping views of the Manhattan skyline. She moved with practiced precision, searching for the briefcase Karim had described. Bin Rashid never traveled without it, an expensive Hermes piece with distinctive gold hardware. She found it locked inside a closet safe. The override code worked here too, and the door swung open with ease. I found it, she whispered into her communicator. Beginning extraction. The briefcase was secured with a biometric lock, fingerprint and retinal scan. Normally, this would be impossible to bypass, but Ahmad had prepared for this. Samantha removed what looked like a compact mirror, but it was, in fact, a high-tech device designed to mimic biometric patterns. 2 minutes, Ahmad warned in her ear. Guards are completing their rounds. The device beeped softly, and the briefcase clicked open. Inside were several folders and a small external hard drive. Samantha worked quickly, photographing each document with a lipstick-shaped camera, then downloading the hard drive's contents to a duplicate device that would leave no trace of the intrusion. What she saw made her blood run cold. Operation Sandstorm was far more extensive than they had ever imagined. It wasn't just a coup attempt, it was a coordinated series of attacks, all designed to throw the entire region into chaos. The documents contained lists of operatives, financial transactions, weapons caches, and, most damning of all, communications with someone identified only as American Eagle, Victor Caldwell's alias. The evidence was irrefutable. Emails, photos, bank transfers, everything was there, all linking Bin Rashid, Caldwell, and their associates to a conspiracy of staggering proportions. Samantha's hands were steady as she sifted through the data, the weight of the evidence settling over her like a heavy fog. 30 seconds, Ahmed's voice came through the earpiece, tight with urgency. Samantha's heart raced as she finished the download, carefully replacing each document exactly as she had found it. She closed the briefcase and returned it to its original position in the closet safe, resetting the lock with a quiet click. But as she moved toward the door, the sound of approaching voices in the hallway froze her in her tracks. "Check on the package before rejoining Mr. Bin Rashid," one voice said. "Guards coming to the suite." Samantha's mind spun as she calculated her options. The bathroom? Too obvious. Under the bed? Juvenile. The balcony? Possibly, but with the suite 42 floors above Manhattan, the risk of being caught was too great. The voices were growing louder. The card reader beeped softly, "Too close." Decision made. Samantha slipped behind the heavy floor-to-ceiling curtains, controlling her breathing, standing perfectly still. Footsteps entered the suite, and two men spoke in Arabic. One checked the safe, standard procedure for any high-profile guest. The other moved around the sitting room, his footsteps echoing off the plush carpet. Neither of them came near the curtains, but Samantha's heart hammered as one man paused nearby, just inches away from her hiding place. "All secure," one of the men finally said. "Let's get back downstairs." The door closed. Samantha waited, counting to 30 before she slowly emerged from her hiding spot, her legs shaking from the adrenaline rush. "Status?" Ahmed's voice crackled through her earpiece, tension threading through his words. "Mission accomplished," she whispered, her voice tight with relief. "Heading back now." The return journey was smooth. She took the service elevator down to the mezzanine, then made a brief stop in the ladies' room to compose herself before rejoining the gala. She met Karim's eyes immediately, and despite his composed demeanor, she saw the relief in his gaze. "Everything all right, darling?" he asked, his voice warm, though the words were for the benefit of the guests nearby. "Perfect," Samantha replied, smiling up at him. "Though I find myself with a bit of a headache. Perhaps we could leave soon." "Of course," Karim agreed immediately, signaling a waiter for champagne. "One last toast, and we'll go." As they clinked glasses, Bin Rashid approached once more, this time with a stunning woman on his arm. He fixed his cold gaze on them as he neared. "Leaving so soon, Al-Fahad?" "The night is young," Bin Rashid said, his voice smooth but laden with an underlying tension. "Isabel isn't feeling well," Karim explained smoothly, his hand resting possessively at the small of Samantha's back. Bin Rashid's eyes narrowed as they shifted from Karim to Samantha. "Have we met before, mademoiselle? Something about you seems familiar." Samantha's heart skipped a beat. But her smile never wavered. "I doubt it," she said lightly. "I spend most of my time in Europe. Perhaps at the diplomatic reception in Geneva last year." Bin Rashid pressed on, his gaze piercing. "I'm afraid not. I was in Barcelona that season." The lie slipped easily from her lips, her French accent flawless. Bin Rashid's expression shifted, the suspicion in his eyes giving way to something darker. "No," he said softly, almost to himself. "I remember now. It was Washington. At the Saudi embassy." Ice flooded Samantha's veins. She had attended a function there during her UN days. Had he seen her? Karim interjected smoothly, stepping in front of her slightly. "You're mistaken. Isabel has never been to Washington." Bin Rashid's lips curled into a thin smile, but it didn't reach his cold eyes. "My apologies then. Memory can be deceptive." As they made their excuses and started to move toward the exit, Samantha felt the weight of Bin Rashid's gaze following them, his suspicion now certain. He knew. Somehow, he knew. In the limousine, once the doors had closed and the vehicle began its journey away from the hotel, Samantha finally released the breath she had been holding. "He recognized me," she said, her voice tight. "Impossible," Ahmad said from the front seat. "Your disguise was perfect." He mentioned Washington. "The Saudi embassy," she replied, turning to look at Karim. "I was there 3 years ago, translating for a UN delegation." Karim's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. "If he knows who you are, then we've lost the element of surprise," she said grimly. Did you get what we needed? Kareem asked, his voice low but filled with expectation. Samantha nodded, pulling the miniature camera and flash drive from her clutch. Everything. Names, dates, plans, and proof that Caldwell was their American contact. Then we still have leverage, Kareem said, his voice steady, but his grip on her hand tightening. One more night. We compile the evidence, create insurance files, and tomorrow we take this to the one person who can help us. Samantha's heart skipped. Who? The current CIA director, Kareem replied, his voice softer now. My father's oldest friend. Hope flickered in Samantha's chest, but it was fleeting. If bin Rashid recognized me, we may not have until tomorrow. As if confirming her fears, Ahmed's phone buzzed. His expression shifted to grim as he read the message. Security breach at the penthouse, he reported, his voice clipped. Someone tried to override the elevator access. Kareem's grip on Samantha's hand tightened. Change of plans. We're not going back to the penthouse. Where then? Samantha asked, her voice steady despite the sudden shift. Somewhere they'd never look for a billionaire and a fugitive, Kareem said, his lips curling into a small, knowing smile. My mother's old apartment in Queens. I kept it after she died, he added, his tone becoming reflective. Never listed it under my name. As the limousine changed direction and headed toward the Queensboro Bridge, Samantha felt a strange sense of inevitability wash over her. In less than 24 hours, her world had been turned upside down again. But this time, she wasn't alone. She glanced at Kareem, meeting his gaze. His dark eyes were locked on hers, intense and unwavering. Why are you helping me? She asked softly, the question slipping out before she could stop it. You could have handed me over. Saved yourself the trouble. Kareem's voice dropped lower, his words heavier with meaning. Because 10 years ago, I made a promise over my parents' graves to find the truth, no matter the cost. His voice softened, but the intensity remained. And because when you answered me in Arabic at the restaurant, I saw something in you that I recognize in myself. Samantha's brow furrowed. What's that? Someone who refuses to be broken by circumstance. The truth in his words struck a chord deep inside her. For the first time in years, Samantha felt truly seen. As the city lights blurred past the windows, she allowed herself to lean slightly against his shoulder, closing her eyes for a moment. Tomorrow would bring either justice or ruin, but tonight, at least, she wasn't facing it alone. Dawn broke over the Queens neighborhood, casting soft golden light across the modest apartment. Samantha sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by printouts of the evidence they'd stolen. Beside her, Kareem reviewed financial records on his laptop, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. The polished billionaire exterior was gone, replaced by a man whose determination was laid bare. Ahmad entered, setting down coffee and a stack of burner phones he'd acquired overnight. No signs of surveillance, Ahmad reported, his voice sharp. The safe house is secure for now. Samantha murmured, sorting another document into her proof pile. Good. We'll need every advantage. Kareem looked up, his eyes scanning the documents briefly before he spoke. Director Harlow has confirmed the meeting. Noon today at the safe location. Samantha nodded, though the gnawing anxiety still tugged at her. She couldn't help but wonder, if bin Rashid knew who she was, how long could they stay one step ahead? If bin Rashid has already realized who I am, we'll be long gone before he can act, Kareem assured her, his hand gently covering hers. The casual intimacy of the gesture surprised them both, but neither pulled away. The past 18 hours had forged an unexpected connection between them, one that defied explanation. Perhaps it was their shared mission, or the parallel tragedies that had shaped their lives. Or maybe it was something more primal, the recognition of a kindred spirit in the most unexpected place. Samantha's voice was soft as she asked, what happens after? If we succeed, if we bring them down, what then? Karim paused, his expression thoughtful as he considered her question. I haven't allowed myself to think that far ahead, he admitted. Revenge has been my sole purpose for so long. As their eyes met, the unspoken possibilities seemed to hang in the air, suspended between them. Before Karim could respond, Ahmed's phone chimed. He looked at the screen, his face hardening as he moved to the window. Perimeter alert, Ahmad said sharply. Black SUV. 2 men watching the building. Karim turned quickly, his expression turning cold. How? This address isn't connected to me in any way, Ahmad replied, scanning the street below. Samantha's mind raced. The charity guest list. If bin Rashid has access to facial recognition software, he could have identified me despite the mask, she said, her voice laced with concern. And if they're monitoring financial transactions? The caterers, Karim realized, his eyes narrowing with frustration. I had them deliver food here last night, paid from an account they could trace. We need to move now. Ahmad was already gathering the evidence, swiftly shoving the files into a secure briefcase that had been prepared for such a contingency. Samantha quickly changed from her borrowed sweatpants and t-shirt into a pair of jeans and a hoodie, clothes that would help her blend in and run if necessary. Karim emerged from the bedroom similarly dressed, his usual sharp suits replaced with casual clothes. The transformation was striking. With a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes and stubble darkening his jaw, he looked like a completely different person, a far cry from the polished billionaire she had first met. Director Harlow is sending a security team, he informed them, glancing at the burner phone. ETA 20 minutes. We may not have 20 minutes, Ahmad warned, peering through the blinds. 2 more men just joined the first team. They're approaching the building. Samantha felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the same rush that had kept her alive for 2 years on the run. The fire escape, she suggested, her mind already calculating the quickest route. We can reach the subway before they realize we're gone. And risk being separated? Karim shook his head, his voice firm. We stay together. Before they could argue further, Ahmad spoke again. They're inside the building. The decision was made in a split second. Ahmad would create a diversion at the front entrance while Samantha and Karim made their escape via the fire escape. With the briefcase of evidence in hand, they moved quickly to the fire escape, the metal ladder creaking under their weight. 3 floors down, they heard shouting from above, their pursuers had found the apartment. Move, Karim urged, helping her down the last ladder to the alley below. They ran, the briefcase clutched tightly in Samantha's arms. Karim knew these streets from his childhood visits to his mother's home, guiding them through a labyrinth of alleys and side streets to throw off any pursuit. The subway station appeared ahead, salvation in the form of crowded anonymity. They descended the stairs just as a train arrived, slipping inside as the doors closed behind them. In the relative safety of the crowded car, Samantha allowed herself a shaky breath, her heart still racing. Beside her, Karim checked his watch. 90 minutes until we meet Harlow. Will Ahmad be okay? Samantha asked, concern flickering in her voice. He can take care of himself, Karim reassured her, his gaze scanning the train car for potential threats. And he has diplomatic immunity through my company. They can detain him, but they can't hold him. The train rocked gently as it moved through the tunnel, the mundane normalcy of commuters around them a stark contrast to the life-or-death stakes of their mission. Thank you, Samantha said suddenly, her voice quiet but sincere. For believing me. For helping me. Karim studied her face for a long moment, his hand reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. I should be thanking you, he said softly. For 2 years, I've been collecting evidence, building my case piece by piece. But it was you who found the final proof we needed. The tenderness in his touch, so at odds with the arrogant man she'd first met at the restaurant, made something flutter in her chest. How strange it was, she thought, that in the midst of danger, while on the run for their lives, she felt more alive than she had in years. If we survive this, she began hesitantly, the words weighing heavy on her tongue. When we survive this, he corrected her, his voice steady. When we survive this, she amended with a small smile, a spark of optimism flickering in her chest. What will you do? Go back to your hotels? Your life? Karim's expression grew serious, his gaze distant. That life was built on a foundation of vengeance, he said quietly. Once that purpose is fulfilled. He trailed off, as if the idea of life after vengeance was too foreign to grasp. He shook his head. I don't know who I am without it. You're the man who turned $1 million bet into a mission for justice, Samantha offered, her voice gentle but firm. The man who saw value in a waitress when others saw only someone to be dismissed. Karim's lips twitched in a faint smile. And you're the woman who refused to be broken by the very system that tried to destroy her. The truth of his words hung in the air between them, a silent understanding. For the first time in years, Samantha felt a deep connection, not just to the mission they were on, but to the man beside her. Tomorrow would bring either justice or ruin, but for tonight, at least, she wasn't facing it alone. Dawn broke over the Queen's neighborhood, soft golden light spilling into the modest apartment. Samantha sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by printouts of the evidence they'd stolen, proof that could bring down powerful men and unravel an international conspiracy. Beside her, Karim worked on his laptop, reviewing financial records. He was dressed casually now, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, a far cry from the polished billionaire everyone knew. Ahmad entered, setting down coffee and burner phones he'd acquired overnight. No signs of surveillance, he reported, his voice crisp and efficient. The safe house is secure for now. Samantha glanced up at him, nodding as she sorted another document. Good. We'll need every advantage we can get. Karim checked one of the burners, his expression sharp. Director Harlow has confirmed the meeting. Noon today at the safe location. Samantha nodded, but a knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. She couldn't help but wonder, if bin Rashid recognized her, how long could they stay one step ahead? His smile transformed his face, erasing years of hardened determination. And you are the woman who refused my $1 million on principle, Karim said softly, his voice carrying a deep admiration. The woman who survived alone for 2 years rather than compromise her integrity. The train slowed as it approached the next station, its wheels screeching against the track, but neither of them moved. Through the windows, they could see the lush greenery of Central Park. Their destination was close. They exited cautiously, scanning the area for any signs of pursuit. The park stretched before them, seemingly peaceful under the soft light of the spring morning. They walked briskly, taking indirect routes and frequently changing direction to ensure they weren't followed. The boathouse appeared ahead, its classic architecture reflecting in the calm water of the lake, offering them a fleeting moment of tranquility. Outside, 2 inconspicuous men dressed in casual clothes stood watch. Harlow's security team. They nodded slightly as Karim and Samantha approached, a prearranged signal that the area was secure. Inside, Director Harlow awaited them. A tall, imposing figure with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, he embraced Karim like a son. You look just like your father, Harlow said gruffly, his voice thick with emotion. Director Harlow, Karim's voice held deep respect. Thank you for coming. When the son of Ibrahim al-Fahad calls with evidence of a terrorist plot, Harlow replied, his tone gravely serious, I listen. His gaze shifted to Samantha, and recognition flickered in his eyes. And Samantha Adams. You've been a ghost for 2 years. Not by choice, Samantha replied, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. Your father was one of the best agents I ever knew, Harlow said, his expression softening. His death never sat right with me. Samantha's jaw tightened. It wasn't a heart attack. Harlow nodded, his face growing serious. I'm beginning to understand that. Harlow gestured to a table, his commanding presence filling the room. Show me what you have. For the next 30 minutes, they laid out the evidence, piece by piece. Operation Sandstorm in its entirety. The planned attacks. The financial network. The operatives embedded in governments across the Middle East. And most damning of all, Victor Caldwell's role as their American handler. Harlow's expression grew increasingly grave as he absorbed the information. "This goes deeper than I imagined," he muttered. Looking up, his voice turned cold. "You realize what this means, right? The implications?" Samantha met his gaze. "That elements within our own government have been compromised." Kareem nodded. Victor Caldwell wasn't acting alone. "And bin Rashid has powerful allies who will try to bury this," Samantha added, her voice grim. Harlow nodded slowly, his face set in hard lines. "Which is why we need to move immediately. I have a safe house prepared for both of you while we implement the takedown operation." "Both of us?" Samantha questioned, her brow furrowing. "You'll need to testify," Harlow explained, his tone pragmatic. "And until we've identified and neutralized all of bin Rashid's network, you remain in danger." Kareem took her hand, his eyes asking a silent question. She nodded slightly in response. They were in this together, to the end. "What about the charges against Samantha?" Kareem asked, his voice low, almost protective. "Already handling it," Harlow assured them. "The evidence you've provided clearly implicates bin Rashid's team in framing her for Caldwell's murder." Just as the tension seemed to settle, a commotion outside interrupted them, raised voices followed by silence. One of Harlow's security men entered, his expression urgent. "Sir," the man said, "Ahmad al-Zahrani is here. He says it's critical." The door burst open, and Ahmad staggered in, blood streaking one side of his face. "They know," Ahmad gasped, his voice strained. "Bin Rashid is gone. He fled the country an hour ago," Ahmad continued, grimacing from pain. "But he activated sleeper cells before leaving. They're targeting the UN General Assembly session today." Harlow's expression hardened. He was already on the phone, issuing rapid-fire orders for evacuation and counter-terrorism protocols. "How did you find us?" Kareem demanded, supporting Ahmad into a chair. "Director Harlow's team extracted me from the apartment," Ahmad explained, wincing as Samantha gently examined his head wound. "Superficial," he assured her. "But we don't have much time." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Harlow coordinated a massive security operation, using the intelligence Samantha and Kareem had provided. Authorities now knew exactly where to look, who to arrest, and what to prevent. By midday, news broke of a foiled terrorist plot and the arrest of multiple suspects. Bin Rashid himself had escaped justice, for now. His network was crumbling, his assets frozen, and his allies under investigation. Operation Sandstorm had been neutralized before it could unleash chaos across the Middle East. "It's over," Harlow told them finally, his voice tired but satisfied. "Not completely," Samantha pressed, her voice tinged with resolve. "These cases never are." Harlow nodded. "But the immediate threat has been contained." "And Caldwell's co-conspirators within the government?" Samantha asked, her eyes sharp. "Being dealt with at the highest levels," Harlow replied, his grim expression suggesting a reckoning that would happen behind closed doors. "Now, about that safe house." Harlow began, but Kareem interrupted. "Actually," he said, his tone shifting, "I have an alternative proposal." 3 months later, Samantha stood on the deck of a sleek yacht anchored off the Amalfi coast, the Mediterranean stretching out before her in its breathtaking beauty. The azure waters sparkled under the sun, and the peaceful serenity of the scene was a world away from the chaos of Manhattan restaurants and international conspiracies. Arms encircled her from behind, and she leaned back into Kareem's embrace. "Regretting your decision," he murmured, his breath warm against her hair. Samantha turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had transformed from an arrogant stranger to an essential partner in the span of a heartbeat. "Which one?" she teased, her voice soft. Testifying against international terrorists, going into witness protection, or agreeing to marry you. His smile still had the power to take her breath away. All of the above. Samantha laughed, leaning into him as the weight of the last few months lifted from her shoulders. Not for a second. She rose on her tiptoes to kiss him, but added with a playful glint in her eyes, though I'm still getting used to being Isabelle Laurent. Only on paper, he reminded her gently. To me, you'll always be the waitress who turned down $1 million. And you'll always be the entitled billionaire who learned humility through justice, she countered with a smile, feeling the warmth of his embrace. Their new identities, courtesy of Director Harlow and witness protection, were a small price to pay for their safety. Karim had relinquished day-to-day control of his hotel empire, though he maintained ownership through layers of security that even bin Rashid's remaining allies couldn't penetrate. Ahmad had fully recovered and was now heading security for their foundation, the Adams Al-Fahad Initiative for International Peace, funded by the very $1 million that had started it all. Justice had been served, though not perfectly. Some conspirators had escaped. Others had been protected by political necessity. But the truth was known, their fathers' legacies honored, and the longest-running operation of betrayal in Middle Eastern politics had been exposed. Any regrets? Karim asked, his tone more serious now. Your life in New York. Your career. Samantha's lips curled into a playful smile. My life as a waitress. Hiding from assassins. She laughed softly, the sound of it carefree, lighter than it had been in years. Not exactly a difficult choice. As the sun began to set over the Mediterranean, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, the life they had built together seemed more perfect than any plan they could have made. In a few days, they would be married in a private ceremony, with Ahmad and a few trusted friends in attendance. Life had taken Samantha from diplomatic translator to fugitive waitress, to the fiancée of a reformed billionaire with a passion for justice. Not the path she'd imagined, but standing here in Karim's arms, she knew it was exactly where she belonged. You never did tell me, she said suddenly, her voice thoughtful. That night at the restaurant, when you offered me $1 million, did you ever imagine it would end like this? Karim smiled, drawing her closer. Honestly? No. But I'm beginning to think it was the best investment I ever made. As their lips met in a kiss, Samantha silently agreed. Some things were worth far more than $1 million. Truth. Justice. And love that had started with an arrogant challenge in a New York restaurant and culminated in redemption on the shores of the Mediterranean. Sometimes the most unexpected beginnings led to the most perfect endings.